My name is Tom. One of my jobs at the Innis Registrar's office is to offer the financial aid counseling to students. And so part of what we're talking about, as you can tell probably from the title, is a bit about financing your years here at the University of Toronto and things to consider, even though you may come from a wide spectrum of backgrounds where your financial resources may be copious or rather limited. So the same kind of lessons, the same things to keep in mind apply to everyone universally. The other part of this is actually going to be talking about the student web service, which is actually your web-based access to a lot of your key information and the functions you need to use to be a student, particularly a lot of the stuff that we talked about today. Getting in there, adding courses, dropping courses, managing courses down the line, managing your programs of study. Just want to give you a little window on that, just to really prove that in fact it's incredibly intuitive and that you have nothing really to fear about it at all. There's a couple of flash demos that I'll be kind of briskly running through that you could also watch at your leisure later on. And in fact that's what I'm going to start with, getting into the student web service, access to what's called ROSI, which I'll explain in a second, talking a bit about registration again and fees, and then go on to talk about financing and budgeting and so forth. So let's just get that started. Don't worry, anyone coming in, I haven't said anything interesting yet. So the student web service is the web-based access for you to get access to your information and modify your courses and such online. The actual sort of system, the big database that we all use, that is say we use, administrators use, you use, is called ROSI, called the Repository of Student Information. And that's its URL right there. And your access to it is what allows you to do things like edit your personal information and all the other things that I've talked about. Anything I'm saying here today is also covered to some extent in the timetable, the thinner of the two books we've been talking about today, which has a whole bunch of kind of instruction manual type stuff in the beginning. And that includes how to access ROSI for the first time and such like that. But the demos I'm going to show you are pretty straightforward. The key thing, and you can start to do this almost right away, is to just get in there and start to nose around. Some of the functionality of ROSI you can't use yet. You don't add courses until July 30th and such like that. But the first time you go in, your ID is based on your student number. And that's always your ID going in. So some of you might start with 999. Some of you might start with 1 and 4 zeros. It's your applicant number. It's your student number. It's your student number in perpetuity. As a side note, it's one of the reasons why your student number is something you should not share freely, because it is one of the key components to get into the student web service and therefore gives someone who could get in there on your behalf access to cause a lot of damage and get into your personal information. The other thing when you first get into ROSI is that you have a 6-digit, and it's all numbers, password. And the one that's initially set for you is based on your year of birth, actually, well, your whole date of birth. So 2 digits for the year, 2 digits for the month, and 2 digits for the day. And then when you go in for the first time, you'll be able to do the typical stuff that online security asks you to do. You can come up with your own 6-digit PIN, and maybe also come up with security questions so that if you ever forget that PIN, you can reset it yourself just by going through that process. Now let's kind of move on to look a bit at the site and the demos. So let's see here. That's what the actual login site looks like. That's rosie.utoronto.ca, and there's a bar at the top including, as you can see here, demos. And that's the login itself. Let's quickly look at the flash demo of what it takes to actually get in the first time, because I'm sure you will be impressed at how simple it is. So here we go. The demo's coming along. There's Rosie, and there's the website that we've just seen. And we'll zoom in a little bit. And there's a person typing in their student number. What a surprise, that appears fake, or the student started U of T in 1912. And then you move in and type in your password, typical stuff, and log in, click, and voila. Here is our sort of faux student and what the home page looks like. An actual little update on this. Since this demo was done a couple of years ago, the faculty is actually trying to set up a more robust opening screen that will actually include not just this personal information you see here, but up-to-date information about your current academic session. Like, are you registered yet? Do you have an balance that's outstanding and stuff like that? So if it looks a bit different, don't panic. They're just trying to put up a bit more important information in the front screen, but it doesn't actually change any of the functionality. And what we can see here, the home page is pretty straightforward. It just reminds you what your current mailing address is and tells you a little bit about what your current email address is. In this particular case, this example, there is no email address. Both of these things are important not to forget about. We don't send that many things in by paper mail anymore, but when we do, it's pretty important. So you have the opportunity both to give a current mailing address, or just mailing address, and a permanent mailing address. The difference between them is one is the one that applies during your school year, and the other would be the one that would apply no matter what. Typical example might be if a student's in residence during the year but goes home in the off season. The permanent address should be your at-home address, and the mailing address should be wherever you're staying during this school year. But keep that up to date. And when you do get your email activated, and some of you may have done this already, some of you might not have, because you need to activate your library card first. You may be doing it over the next few weeks if you're local to Toronto, or you may be doing it in September. Make sure that your email is accurately updated on Rosie, because we do send lots of emails out, and we don't send out anything confidential unless we know it's going from our UToronto address to your UToronto address. So we don't answer anything confidential when it comes from Hotmail or Gmail and such, because we want to preserve your confidentiality and keep it all in the U of T email system. So, and anything official that comes from other units or divisions from U of T will go to your UToronto email address. So that's something that you would ultimately get to update. Now the rest of this demo focuses on other things related to course enrollment, but there's in fact a separate demo just on course enrollment. So I'm now going to talk a bit about that. Here we go, fast forwarding along. So here we are back in our example student. And what you're going to be using Student Web Service principally in the next few weeks will be to check your start time. Does everyone know what day you check your start time on? July, thank you, July 23rd, for anyone who didn't hear that. And your course enrollment date is? July 30th. Lovely. So, and you'll want to be on your computer at the precise time that you've been given, Toronto hours, for your start times, to give the maximum chance for you to get into the sections of the lectures you want, or if you're going for those seminar courses which only have 24 spaces, and you're competing with everyone else who wants to do the one on Tolkien, then you really want to make sure you get into the one you want. So, of course, this menu on the side has all the options. The one that's lit up right now is course enrollment. That's what we're going to be talking about. You can see the range of things you can do here. When you come in course at graduation, you actually get your graduation ceremony tickets here. You can look at your timetable. You can handle your subject posts here, especially after first year. Student elections can be voted through here, looking at your transcripts, requesting graduation. You can look at your invoice, even tax forms that you'll start to acquire after you've completed some time here to get your tuition credit for those of you who are eagerly anticipating filing your taxes or filing your parents' taxes. And of course also personal information. But let's jump to the course enrollment quickly. So, jump into course enrollment. They give you a list of all the different academic sessions that could be in play. In our example here, there's three, all from fall and winter 2009, summer, and fall winter. Actually, most of the time, there should only be at most really 2 of these up, because there's only really one time where you could actually be theoretically doing something in 2 sessions at the same time. And that would be at the end of one fall-winter session, looking into the summer of the fall, that follows it immediately. So just make sure you always click on the one you want. And basically, the menu exists on all these things that kind of jump you to all the key elements that deals with course enrollment. So in this demo, they're going to go straight to view timetables and spaces. This function is very simple and only does one thing. It allows you to click in a bunch of courses and see what the sections are and what spaces they have. It doesn't let you make any changes in this one. And in fact, I think for a lot of you, you may never use this, because if you preset your schedule and you know what courses you want, you may bypass this and go straight into adding courses to do the same thing. But to show you what it looks like, it's very simple. You can punch in a number of courses, up to 3. In this example, they'll punch in a couple. There's the course thing. Remember, section code, that comes out of the timetable, so it identifies which course in particular you're interested in. In this case, they're looking at 2 courses, and then they hit the view, boink, and then you get it listed out. So in this example, the Aboriginal Studies course, there's one section in the evening, and they tell you everything, right? There's the spaces available, there's the time and such. 2 sections for this example for English, and there's 2 lecture sections, how many spaces there are, and so they remind you even of when they're happening and such. And there's buttons here to go straight into managing the course if you actually wanted to start doing adding or dropping and stuff like that. You can also filter and only look at sort of certain sections if you really want to, or practicals, tutorials, or lecture sections only. Doesn't really apply in this particular example. But let's go straight to managing courses, because I suspect this is what you're going to jump to on your start time on July 30th. Looks like the same kind of thing. You put in the activity code, which means the course code, and the section code. So in this example, we're adding in this course. You hit submit, And you don't actually have to remember very much. The thing will instantly tell you what are all the lecture sections and what the availability is. So in this example, there's one evening section, there are spaces. So you have a button there. Yes, I'd like you click on the bubble if you want that one. You hit add evening sections or add meeting sections. And there on the top, you got a little window that says it's been successfully added. And then you applaud and you high five yourself and you continue on with your next course. This, of course, as you can see, this is real time. When you're doing this on the 30th, you're doing it with everyone else who's got roughly the same start time. So prioritizing your courses is important, because if you're some courses that you're really worried about getting into, plug them in first. Make sure you've got them and save the ones where you have more flexibility until later. In this case, we're moving on to an English course, blah, blah, blah. There's a couple of sections. We bubble the one we want, easy peasy. In this case, we're going for that one, click, and that's been added too. Now, when you've done a bunch of course changes, you should always list your courses. And this is the next thing up, and we're going to click on that now. Why? Because I've had a lot of students come to me and say, I could swear I added this course and it's not on my list, or I could swear I dropped a course and it's still on my schedule. What do I do? And that can cause a lot of problems. So always double check, in case you missed the bubble, who knows what could happen. List the courses so you can see for sure what you're in. In this example, there's already been a preloaded course because we only added 2, but there's actually 3 courses here. But you see them under the nice green bar. Approved means, yes, you have a spot in the course right now. And then you can manage some things onto the side. View timetable spaces is the bar up there, and you can see your timetable, and they lay it out graphically for you. Isn't that nice? So you can see it all looks beautiful, and down at the bottom you can even see your registration status. Invited means that you can enroll in courses, but you're not registered yet, and there you see the also in list form. And this example you can also see, for those who are in second year, your actual subject posts. You can also click on the timetable, the map of your classes. It's right there in the middle. And that will take you to an interactive Google map. How nice. Where all the buildings on campus are highlighted with their information. And you can scroll around and start to time how long will it take me to get from class A to class B. What's the spread along the massive 35 square blocks of the city that I'm in. You can get information on the different buildings and the directions, all that good stuff. And if you're the kind of person who loves to have vertigo, you can pretend you're 1,000 miles off the face of the earth and see it in satellite form as well. Or what the heck, you could see both in the hybrid. And again, bounce around. It's basically Google Maps functionality, something I'm sure is probably somewhat familiar to a lot of you. You can also look at the other campuses too, so it's all built into there, and jump around if you just want to kind of explore stuff. So let's move past the mappy action and come back to managing courses, because it's not just adding sometimes, it's sometimes running into other problems. Let's add another course. Click, click, click. I want to do anthropology. I'm totally into that. We click it. Here's a bunch of lecture sections. By the way, this is rarely going to happen. In this weird example, there's a gazillion lecture sections. It's simply not real. But we're going to pick one. That's nice. The only one that seems to be available to us. And we hit it. And then we say, that's great. It got added. Now we list our courses. Looks fine. Now we view the timetable. Dun, dun, dun. There's a class conflict. The timetable will set up a nice red bar if you've enrolled in 2 courses that happen at the same time, or at least overlap to some degree. You may be thinking to yourself, why does Rosie let me do this? Surely that's a recipe for disaster. Well, yes, but there may be a good reason why you would want to do this if you, for example, are thinking about 2 courses that happen at the same time and you don't know which one you want. Rosie, at least at this point, gives you the opportunity to actually secure a spot in both courses, but it will warn you there's a conflict. And of course, my warning to you is, if you're shopping around in this way, remember to drop one. Do not undertake the possibility of trying to do 2 courses at the same time. It may not be policed, but the last thing you want to do is find out there are 2 in-class tests at the same time in 2 different locations. No prof is going to give you any leniency on that front, and I've had students that have had to drop courses because this kind of miscalculation runs them into real damage. Plus, the simple fact is the lectures are important to go to. If you set up 2 classes at the same time, you're limiting yourself to getting notes or other things, doing all these cartwheels to try to make it work. Don't put yourself into that trouble. And so in this example, of course, we don't want it, so conflicts in red, so we go back and we manage courses, and we can drop a course or switch the section. In this case, to alleviate the problem, we're going to switch the section to one where there's a wait list. Wait lists were talked about, and that you get this kind of lecture sort of warning at the bottom saying, hey, it's full, there's 2 people on the wait list, do you want to add it? And we say yes, and that's great. And now when we list our courses, we see that actually can be two categories, approved and also waitlisted courses. I said this earlier to my group, and I'm sure you've heard it again, but I'll say it again. When you waitlist with a course, keep monitoring the course. It's automatic. Every time spaces are free, people move up in the waitlist and get put in automatically. An email is sent out if you're put into the course, but emails can get lost. I've had lots of students who are surprised months into the session to find out that they're in a course they didn't remember, or if they forgot to remove themselves from, and you're responsible for that course. Either you have to drop it, or in some cases in the summer where you pay per course, you may be paying for it. So do not rely just totally on email sort of warnings and such. If you waitlisted with courses, watch the courses. Just sign in and check it from time to time. So we can also remove yourself from a wait list, just like dropping courses. You just manage the courses, and it's done. Again, you can see every time you made a change at the top, there's that green bar with a little helpful hand pointing, making it look like a Western saloon, telling you what's just happened. And always list your courses when you've made changes, and you can see how it looks. Dropping courses, same kind of thing. It's one of the options. You go in and you drop a course. You drop a course, and you're allowed to drop a course before the deadline. That course disappears from your transcript. It'll be like you never took it. I'll talk a bit about the fees implications of dropping courses, but in a second. That's that demo. It's easy to find, rosie.utoronto.ca. It's one of the bars on the top, so if you want to watch those things at more leisure, because you just really love its artistry, don't hesitate to do so, watch it. But really, it's very intuitive, so I don't think you're going to find much problems with that. Any questions at this point in the game? Yeah, oh, nope, sorry, someone's just wiping the sleep out of their eye, sorry. Okay, so there's no question. Let's just move on to the next part. When you roll in courses, you're automatically going to be considered like a full-time student. So when you go to your invoice, you're going to be paying the flat program fee for full-time students. It doesn't matter how many courses you've added. And that will stay the same unless for some reason you come to us and say, I'm only planning to go part-time, and I'll talk about that in a second. The next stage of the game, once you're in courses, though, is to actually register. And registering means you deal with your fees by August the 21st. And it's one of two ways. You either make a minimum payment, and the minimum payment's calculated on the invoice, and that's one of the buttons on the menu, 65% of the total tuition, or you defer your fees if you're getting student loans, and there's a button there for that too, assuming you applied for OSAP or some student loan a while ago, and you're on our database. But the 21st deadline in August is really important to meet, because 10 business days after that, if you're not registered, you're pulled from your courses, and it may not be possible to get you back in. When I talk about flat fees, or program fees is the technical term for it, basically means that you're paying the same amount of money, whether you're in 3 credits or up to 6 credits. And there's the amounts there, just in case you want to catch your breath. That's domestic fees there, a little over $5,600, and for international students, much, much higher. And then you tack on the mandatory incidental fees. People wonder what that is. Incidental fees are society fees, sort of infrastructure fees. They vary from college to college, and they are mandatory. There's some you can opt out of. There's some of those incidental fees include health care packages, which if you're already covered by something else, you can opt out of a few months into the session. But basically, you can see how much money you're up with. And you can also see that there's a bit of an incentive. There's not a lot of a reward doing only 3 credits as a full-time student. It works out mathematically that really what you want to do is 5 to get the most out of the money. And so this is in place, and it's something for you to consider. I would never tell a student if there's a severe and important academic reason to do fewer than 5 courses, to do 5 just because of the money, the money sort of value out of it, though obviously that's a huge incentive. The reality is you may be taking varying levels of courses just depending how the courses went or other situations going on in your life, but you should go in with your eyes open about how the program fee works. When students are part-time, that is to say they're intending to do fewer than 3 credits in a fall-winter session, and they stick to that, they can pay per course. And that, of course, changes the dynamic in terms of your cost tremendously, because now it's actually based on how many courses you're actually in. And you can actually adjust your fees. If you drop courses super early, even get refunds on those points. Basically, it works out to about nearly $570 per half credit and such. And your incidental fees also go down if you're part-time. But as someone asked earlier today, if you're going part-time, of course, you're going to be here for 8 or 9 years. So it's not an option that people necessarily take unless their life circumstances demand it. But it's important to know that it's there. As I mentioned, everyone starts on this flat fee. That's just the default. If someone is planning to do less than 3 credits and they're really sure about it, they can come to us and we can adjust you manually and put you down to the per course fees. When we do that, you're at a ceiling, which means you can't add any more than 2.5 credits, and that includes waitlisted courses. And basically, but that you are now adjusted to this different fee schedule. A warning though, the program fee, whether students are paying program fee or paying per course, depends on how many courses you're in and how long you're in them. So it's actually possible for students, even if they go to per course fees, if they drop some courses, then add some more, depending on when they do it, they can actually get rolled back into the program fee. Basically, because the U of T is looking at not just how many courses you're in at the end, but how many courses you actually occupied for a long period of time. This is the rule, and I don't expect you necessarily to absorb this in great detail now, but I want to highlight it. For any one of you who might be in that threshold, do I do 3 credits, do I do 2.5? Here's how they calculate it. You pay the program fee, the flat fee, if your Y and F section courses, those are the courses that start in September, that you're in as of October the 3rd, plus the S section courses as of January 20th, all add up to 3 credits or more. If that proves true, you pay the program fee. And so like I say, there are 2 implications. One is that if you stay in a course long enough and you don't drop it early, it may be part of that calculation. You may be married to the program fee. And it also means that even if you're per course at the beginning of the year, if you drop an F course or a course in September late and then add an S course, your count may actually bump back up to 3, and suddenly, bam, you're back to $5,700 or $28,000 in a snap. And so you've got to be careful about that. The reason why we don't start people in per course is simply that you don't have any, majority of people are full-time anyway, and because if you're start part-time, you're stuck at 2.5 credits. So really, only come to us if you want to go to part-time, if you know that you're keeping to this low threshold of credits. I would, despite the fact that this incentive suggested, hey, why don't I just go for 6 courses and I'll get the most for my money. Don't go for more than 5 in your first year. You don't know what the load's going to be like, and you want to just kind of keep sure that you can understand sort of how it'll all fit into your new life-work balance that comes with being a student. You can enroll in 6 credits starting August 9th, but most people do that just to shop around. Like they want to secure themselves another spot, they come into the classes and they see what they like and maybe drop themselves back down to 5. If that's what you're going to do, great. You've got that power, but be nice. Don't stick around in courses too long because someone else actually might want the spot. And like I say, don't lose track of waitlisted courses. They're part of your tally, and they could come and haunt you later on if you just forgot that you had them. Any questions at this point? Yes. Are full or part-time, stuff like that? Yeah. Okay, for someone who didn't hear the question is if you've applied for OSAP, how does U of T know you're on OSAP so you can defer your fees? And that stuff is transmitted between the ministry and basically the university. If you apply early enough and your whole thing is set, our enrollment services office on 172 St. George basically gets downloads of all the people who have got OSAP and are getting some kind of OSAP. And as long as you don't have a back balance from a previous session and stuff, they load it up on the system, which means the system knows you can defer your fees. It can also be done manually in weird cases where someone's applied for OSAP super late, or if they want to defer their fees because they're getting a massive scholarship, then we can also manually defer fees. But basically, if you've done your OSAP application or student loans and that information has gotten to U of T, it will come through the ministry and such. In fact, OSAP these days are almost entirely electronic, which is a great boost. You're coming in a very good year when it comes to avoiding long lineups. Any other questions, by the way? Sorry, yes? Good question. For those in here, when is scholarship money deducted from tuition? It'll probably be within the first 4 weeks of school as a rule, because what they usually are dependent on is, are you registered? So as soon as that's, and not just that, after August the 21st, but we'll wait and see you've actually shown up for classes and haven't dropped everything at that point. And then someone in some office will do some process. In my case, for any Innis scholarships, I will do it probably at that point it's actually automated. I memo the central officers so they know who's registered and who isn't, and they process process those. Unless there's a scholarship that says specifically otherwise, admission scholarships will kick in the early few weeks. And so on that point, if you're getting a scholarship that's so big that it actually would cover your minimum payment, then you are a candidate for someone who might come to our office and say, hey, I want to defer my fees because basically when first few weeks of classes, a massive amount of money is going to come in and cover my first payment, in which case we'll probably say yes, and we'll just do it, and there's a form, because there's a form for everything, and that'll take care of it. So, but if it's a scholarship that's less than your minimum amount, what you would do is when you see your invoice and you see your minimum payment, just mentally deduct the amount that would be your scholarship that would come and pay what's the rest, and that will get you registered. Any other questions? Yes? When you apply for scholarships, is a question here. A bit of a broad topic. If you have an admission scholarship, you'd know. So it doesn't, in this bearing, in terms of this beginning of the year, there's no, you would know already if you were getting it. There's nothing more to apply for at this point anyway. There are in-course scholarships that occur at the university and at Innis. Some of them you don't have to apply for at all. If there are any university scholarships that require just basically good marks, no one applies. We just look at the marks and pick out who we want to give scholarships to. So the only scholarships, at least at Innis particularly, that involve applications usually have something more to it than marks. They might be leadership and extracurricular activities. We have a lot of those here at Innis and across the campus, and there are other more eclectic sort of scholarships. Basically, there's no one resource. You just got to keep your eyes open. For us, our leadership awards are in April. Our awards based on marks, we just pick them out every September and such based on the marks of students having completed courses here. So there's nothing for a student to do at that point and such. But it's a very broad and complicated subject, so if anyone's really trying to suss out what the various aspects are in terms of scholarships, an appointment with me would not be a bad idea. But I forewarn you, there is not one database out there with all the scholarships available. It's a matter of hunting around. Your Google is your friend, and keeping your ears and eyes open for any scholarships that might pop up, whether department-based, college-based, or university-based. Any other questions? Yes? Yes, that amount I told you that I put, let's back it up, that 5,000 is for the September to April fall-winter session. In the summer, it's actually always per course, and it's probably roughly about 1/10 of that value per half credit, possibly bumped up a little bit. But that's for the entire fall-winter session. All right. Let's talk now about for the last 15 minutes, about the general issues about financing your education and budgeting and stuff like that. As I said, all of you are coming from different backgrounds. You may have lots of different dynamics when it comes to trying to balance going to school, doing your academics, getting extracurricular involvement in, and of course, keeping track of your money. Maybe someone yesterday must have won $50 million in the Lotto Max. Maybe that person has no problems at all. But for the rest of us, some skills and some disciplines and some foreplanning will be critical to relieving any stress that can come with financial such. The university does try to commit to financial help, and this is its statement on this, which means that the university does have a very generous grant system, and they throw money to help students, supplementing the resources the students are typically required to use to get to school. Of course, if you've got RESPs or good family savings or whatever else, or come from an affluent background, there's probably not going to be much of an issue. If you're getting student loans and such, sometimes the university can supplement those student loans if you're paying higher than normal fees, or in the terms of emergency grants. And of course, we have a very robust set of in-course scholarships that come up when you're getting good marks once you're here. So there's lots of resources that the university throws to try to help students out. But the goal is still, you have to start with knowing what your resources are and what the expected resources are for you, and using them and planning ahead. What do? Well, you tally up what your resources are. What is the sources of money you're going to have? You may be projecting what my summer earnings are going to be. You may know precisely some amounts of money, like scholarships or OSAP if you've applied and such like that, or how much your parents are willing to contribute or family is willing to contribute, the RESP monies and stuff like that. The other thing, of course, you've got to project is, what are my expenses? Some of them are going to be pretty straightforward and upfront and lump sum, but you want to also try to tally realistically for yourself ahead of time what you're going to spend on other things, because there's going to be a wide range of various things you could be spending your money on, from the absolutely essential to the voluntary, and then you make a budget. And that helps you look ahead and see if you can see any bumps in the road ahead of time. What are the typical resources that a student has? Well, I've pretty much gone over most of them anyway, just briskly, but of course, family is often a source of money and a source of resources too, of course. If you're living and commuting from home, of course, there's rent and food probably that's being provided for without necessarily a dollar value attached to it directly. But of course, your family and your own savings might be contributing directly to the money you have. RESPs are another thing. There are forms usually you bring in, and we confirm what year of study you're in. We have to go by the number of credits, but basically most RESP monies are released in 4 installments, but there may be different ones that you have. That's fine. Whatever thing you need us to do to help do the paper processing, we do that all the time. When you know you have scholarships, you factor that in. If you're getting loans, whether it be OSAP or an out-of-province loan or even any other kind of loan possibly, then you factor in that amount. And of course, part-time work. I should have added also here summer work. When you are going to school, summer is not, there are courses offered in the summer, but not a ton. Summer in the Faculty of Arts and Science here is considered more or less more of an optional session. The norm, it's assumed, is that students take courses from September or April and then they work in the summer to build up some money for themselves, get some work experience and things like that. Summer is at most used for a lot of students as a kind of a catch-up period for maybe some courses they had to drop some, or they wanted to take another crack at a course or something like that. During the school year, part-time work is one of the possibilities. A lot of students shy away from that, and I totally get that. And if you can afford not to work, great. But it can be good experience, and it can sometimes be not intrusive, and that can be very helpful in order to be able to give yourself a bit of a buffer in terms of funding. Just to go through some of these other resources in more detail, scholarships I've talked about. If you have an admission scholarship, you know by now, down the line as you do courses here and get good marks, or you get really involved extracurricularly, you may be able to apply for scholarships as well, what we call in-course scholarships, meaning you're getting them while you're a current student, and there are even at the end of the road some graduation scholarships. As I say, researching scholarships, a bit tricky. Keep your eyes and ears open, not just on campus, but off. Sometimes you can find scholarships because of the company you work for in the summer, or the company your parents work for in the summer, or unions, or charitable organizations. Community groups and such could have scholarships. Don't leave anything unturned if you're really interested in trying to hunt down some options out there. Hands up who's applying for OSAP. Okay, a good number of you, and and it's a large percentage of our students, either in part or in full, are relying on OSAP or another provincial loan. And the other provincial loans operate in much a similar way, so I'm going to focus on OSAP here for Ontario students. Of course, you have to be a Canadian citizen. When you apply for OSAP, and those of you who applied probably already know, they look at your parents' income, they look at your income, and they look at what your base expense situation is. Are you going to be living at home, in which case your expenses will be at a lower level than someone who has to live on campus or near campus, away from home, depending on the commute distance and such. And there's the website that applies for it. It's a convoluted formula. I won't go into its details, so I can give you some information later on, but the point is that they are basically assessing who gets a government-sponsored loan, and so they have expectations about, based on parents' income, how much they should be contributing, how much of your own money you should be saving, and so forth. OSAP, I have to say, despite the constraints that it's under, is probably the best loan you can get out there, apart from a family member who gives it to you interest-free, because OSAP is interest-free as long as you're a full-time student and you don't take too long of a break. You have a lot of flexibility about how fast and how much you pay back. There's some loan forgiveness attached to it, so it cuts off some of the high-end elements of the loan, which gives you some relief of the overall debt. A lot of grants and stuff from U of T or otherwise are available to students when they're on OSAP, and some scholarships as well. And this year it's also very, very streamlined. What is the difficulty with OSAP, though, is, of course, to be eligible. You have to, obviously, the income is an issue as well. You always have to be full-time. That means at any one point you have to have what's called a 60% course load. If we're looking at the fall-winter, that means at every point in the school year you have to be at least in 3 courses. If you ever drop below that, they reassess you, consider you ineligible for part of the year, and suddenly you owe OSAP money back. Also, they monitor your academic progress, which means if you're taking all the right number of courses, but you're not passing all of them, then they can actually put you on probation and actually cut off OSAP. How many people are applying for OSAP but haven't done it yet? Okay, so very quick summary. You need to go to the website. have your parents' tax information, 2011, and your own. The rest of the questions will be pretty straightforward, what university you're at and such like that. You'll get to the end, and they'll ask you to print out two things. Signature pages, because this is a loan, so while nearly everything's electronic, they need an actual physical signature on an actual physical piece of paper from your parents or guardians and you deliver those to enrollment services here on campus. And the second thing is a master financial agreement, which you only have to fill in once. And basically you're just telling OSAP what your banking information is, so they'll automatically put the money into your account when you are coming into registration period at the beginnings of classes. And then if you've done this and you do this quickly, it should be on the system as per the question earlier. So when you've enrolled in your courses after the 30th, you should be able to defer your fees, and that will register you, and then the money will be deposited into your account soon after classes start. If anything changes in your circumstances, but in terms of the information of what you've given OSAP at the beginning, you always go to enrollment services and let them know any changes, because they will find out if there are any changes, because they'll check your taxes and they'll check your parents' taxes, and they'll even check the Ministry of Transportation to make sure you don't own a car that you haven't sold to pay for your tuition. So always keep up-to-date information and give them the best information, and change it if necessary when dealing with OSAP. It's a lot of bells and whistles to go through. But that's the price for probably the most generous type of loan from a third party that you're going to be able to get, at least for going to school. I talked about working part-time. Do you do it? It could be a lifesaver. It could give you a buffer you need. You're going to be the best judge of that by planning your budget. Just be careful. Don't get hooked into a job where you feel guilted into taking a gazillion shifts at a time when you're trying to hand in 38 essays. You need to watch it and monitor your progress. And if you are feeling pressure working part-time, maybe you should be coming and talking to me, and so you can find out some other financial release for you. The other part of planning is expenses. I'm going to go through this quickly, but it's perhaps the most important part, because some of this is very unpredictable because it's habit-based. There's a lot of expenses you can immediately count for and lay on that side. Your tuition. If you're in residence, your residence costs. Any travel expenses getting here if there's a large commute. And you could even probably start to predict, or at least budget for yourself, how much for very fixed monthly expenses. You probably know what your cell phone costs already. That's pretty straightforward. If you're going to be renting, you're not in residence, you budget what kind of rent you can go for, utilities, and phones, internet, all that stuff is pretty stable from month to month. And transportation, if you're off campus enough that you're getting a student Metro Pass. It's the gray areas that can really trip people up. All the things you might call it entertainment, call it your little frills, whatever you like, the money that kind of slips through your fingers. And the point is that can actually amount to a lot of money, and that's probably the most important issue that comes with trying to adapt a kind of a discipline regarding budgets and such. And because you can vary how much you spend into it. Some people love to spend a lot of money on clothes, but you don't necessarily have to spend that amount of money. So you need to know what your budget is and predetermine it and stick to it and see how that plays out. Same thing, going out with friends and stuff like that. My best advice when it comes to entertainment is come to campus and stay on campus. We have a ton of stuff going on, and most of it's free. So, it will probably be a better budgetary action than perhaps, roaming around the club district every weekend. But even the little things. Oh, I've just come in from my hour-long commute from Mississauga, and I want my half non-fat latte with the whipped cream on top that's 6 feet high from Starbucks. It's what I need to start my day. By the way, that's $5 a day. That's going to be $100 a month, a minimum that you've just thrown out of your budget. And if you don't think $100 a month matters, you're probably that Lotto Max winner, because it does matter an awful lot. And that's just one thing. If you say, I'm too tired to pack a lunch from home, I'm going to eat on campus. Our campus food is lovely, and you'll pay a lot of money for it. Don't do it unless you know you can budget for it, because it's still fast food and it's still going to cost more than cooking and eating at home. That's why the Innis residence is so popular. You can cook your own food. It's a lot cheaper than meal plans. So these things are discovered by experience and sometimes just by foresight. You put it together in a budget. Expenses on one side, September to April, all the income you've got coming in, and you see how things look. And you start to adjust your expectations and your predetermined budgets based on that. In your package, you should have, I think, a little budget sort of handout sheet. Of course, it's too vague here for you to see. Just squint and imagine, if you will, that it's really detailed and very helpful. But one side is income, the things. You can tally it up. One side's expenses. This is the basis of your operations. And it will let you know right now if you're in trouble, or let you know right now what you can do to avoid being in trouble. And that's probably the key thing about avoiding stress, because knowing it ahead of time is actually a tremendous important tool that you have. When I see students who are being crushed, and I mean crushed because the financial worries are killing them and ruining their courses and stuff, it's because they've let things accumulate and they don't know what their situation is. They're so scared of it, they're not even putting down the numbers on the page. Maybe they got themselves a credit card and they used it as their outlet to deal with things, and now the credit card's huge and in debt, and they're really struggling. I meet students like this, and I'm not saying that there aren't students who are just going to have some financial difficulties, and the world isn't fair. Some of you are going to have more financial difficulties than others. But if you plan ahead and you act with some discipline and you really focus on what realistically you can do and not do, and you do it ahead of time, not only do you see the problems ahead of time, but maybe they will never bother you. Maybe you'll already set yourself up with some discipline and some foresight to be able to get through that. So planning ahead also means establishing the amounts that you think, okay, I look at my budget, I can spend $100 a month on stuff I just want to. So stick to it. Don't go over it, because it will, and watch it. And I've seen people sometimes even just keep a little notebook. It's the same thing with like people who are on a diet, right? I'm writing out every piece of food I eat, what calories it is, so I internalize, rationally what is going into my face. Same thing with money, right? I just bought, my $5, $6 Frappuccino. I just decided to get that Senses 5 gum. I just bought this cable for my thing. Marking it all down, it makes it non-unconscious, and that's probably a really good thing you can do for yourself. But there are going to be emergencies, right? My bed blew up, my computer blew up, I have some dental work and not all of it's covered by the plan I'm on, I have to get home because of an emergency, some family troubles. There are emergency grants at Innis, and they're only available from the fall to the spring, not in the summer. It comes back to that notion. The summer, we expect that you probably, if you have financial troubles, you should probably be not taking classes, but you should be working. But in the fall, winter, we have a budget, and we have an amazing committee made of students and staff. Remember that parity thing at governance at U of T and at Innis? We have a parity, students and staff who look at your grant applications, anonymously, and look at your budget and help dole out money sometimes to help you through a rough patch. When your own budget has been tight and good, but a hole's been blown through it because of stuff you can't control. There are ways to help, which is another reason why, if you're running into financial difficulties, it couldn't hurt to come and talk to me. I'm not saying all of you will be automatically viable for an emergency grant, but sometimes students suffer in silence. Don't. I may not have good news, but sometimes just beginning a conversation about problems, especially around money, can start to make it seem A, less awful and ominous, and B, more solvable. And maybe solvable in a very concrete way. So do come and talk to any of the staff or me specifically about it during the fall if you're running into money troubles. And if you're interested in getting involved in student groups, sometimes first-year students are part of our bursary committee, and you really feel like you're doing good that way. I mentioned the summer, so I'll just say it again. Especially if you're on student loans. Student loans are not going to be enough money by themselves to deal with tuition. I'll give you a hint. The maximum amount you can get on OSAP is probably maybe a tipped over $13,000. If you're, say, in residence or even living on your own and paying tuition, full-time tuition, that's probably coming close to $13,000, probably more than that. We haven't even bought books yet. We haven't even got you a Metro Pass. We haven't paid for your cell phone yet. Earning money in the summer and saving a nest egg to take into the year, you may find not only helpful, but critical. And that means that if you are thinking of taking summer courses, you have a really hard decision to make if you're that tight with your budget. Because you work in the summer, two things are happening. You're not earning money, you're spending it. And if you still get some work, you're clearly not going to be able to work the same hours you could if you were full-time. So summer work will be your friend. Are there any other resources you can use? Sure, you can go to a bank. They have student lines of credit. Sometimes students will if they're on the outs with OSAP because they had a little tiff or whatever else. And there are some slightly more gentle loans you can get through banks for student lines of credit, which includes some better repayment options and some lower interest. But you probably have to get it co-signed, and it's still a bank, still not as good as OSAP. Like I said, financial aid counseling is what I do, and there's lots of financial resources helping, whether it's just me or general sort of workshops on financing and stuff that the university offers generally. And if you have specific questions about OSAP itself, the Enrollment Services Office, which is at 172 St. George, is where they have all the OSAP data. And it's where you go to deliver your signature pages. You can go to do things like appeal your OSAP, try to figure out why your OSAP's so low or why it can't be higher and stuff like that. But you can always feel free to come to me to talk about financial situations if you're running into trouble, or you just want to make sure that you're on the right track. And I should be able to avail you as much options as I know and try to send you to other places if I think it helps you more. We've come to the end of this session just at the nick of time, so I will be outside to answer other questions, but I will remind you of a couple of things. One, please fill in your white evaluation form. We're now in the afternoon. Some of you may be thinking, oh, I'm just going to wander home. If don't, please. There's lots of great stuff coming, but if whatever, the white evaluation forms are super valuable to us, and there's a box you can fill them in and pop them in as well. And there are, in fact, 2 great sessions coming up next. In here, Claudia will be talking about professional faculties. Maybe you're pre-med destined or law school destined and you want to learn more about that, stay here. And there's also a session on sorry, I've got the room wrong. What's the resources one? Wordsworth room 20 on research resources and stuff like that here. It's a little, anyone wants these slides, I'll send them to you. They'll probably be online, but there's lots of other useful financial related websites and such. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter.